This was well worth the wait, but now I've got this to deal with. Hey everyone, welcome to Danny's Tech Channel. If you're new here, this channel is all about new hardware reviews, PC builds, and how-to videos, which is what I'm going to get into today. I've been without our computer for a few weeks now. This is our main computer. If you're interested in it, I'll leave a link in the description below and you can check it out there. Today I'm going to walk you through the process of cable managing your newly built PC, and I'll give you a few of my secrets along the way. Check it out. Okay, so you just finished your newly built PC and now you've got this kind of mess laying on the table in front of you, and you don't know where to go from here. It's like, I admit, it's really overwhelming seeing this spider's web of cables going on here to take care of. So let's guide you through the whole process of it. It actually starts before you even purchase your components for the computer. Some of the most important things I'll list here when you're choosing your components. The case is extremely important because you have different sizes you can pick. ATX, micro ATX, ITX, it's a vast majority of sizes. And that depends, choosing that makes a difference in your cable management. If you choose an ATX case, you're gonna have a lot more room to cable manage than you will with an ITX case, just because of your sheer size and volume. Then you have to look at things like, are there Velcro straps built into it or channeling? Some cases have a channel to actually feed your cables into to kind of guide it along the way. They have cutouts, and they also have tie downs here that you can see as well for running your zip ties through and being able to manage your cables that way. The second thing you need to look at is your motherboard choice. If you choose an ATX case and an ITX motherboard, that's going to create a more challenging cable management process for you because you're going to have the motherboard being so small and the cables have to extend further to your cutouts to go further. The thing I've noticed this a lot with builds is when people choose a micro ATX motherboard and choose a ATX or a large ATX case. Thirdly is your power supply. Your power supply choice, there's three choices really for your power supplies that you'll be using in your newly built PC. They have non-modular, which is all the cables bundled together. You can't unplug anything. It's just a big group of cables that'll give you everything that you need to be able to plug your PC in. The second one is semi-modular, which is actually what I have here. It has your power and EPS connectors already connected, and then you connect your SATA and your VGA and whatnot like that. And then there's fully modular, which you can completely tear apart all the way down to the bare power supply block. And you can get custom cables for it. You can plug whatever cables you need into it. It gives you a lot of versatility when you're playing around, but price increases with each one. So you've got a very cheap price for your non-modular ones all the way up to fully modular, which actually costs usually over $100. And finally, your miscellaneous items that are in your build will affect your cable management. I have 2 extra hard drives at the bottom here, whether you go with SSDs, hard disk drives, or an M.2 form factor hard drive. The M.2 ones are the best for cable management because it doesn't require any kind of external power or anything. You just plug it right into the motherboard and it's good to go. It powers off the motherboard and it connects to the motherboard for data. Rgb Lighting, I have a RGB controller right here. You'll need to plug in those cables that go to, I have 3 fans, 2 in the top, 1 in the back that actually has RGB cables coming from it. Obviously fans themselves, and then CPU coolers. If you use a liquid CPU cooler, I happen to have 2 fan cables for my 280mm rad, and then it also requires SATA power to power the controller as well, the actual pump. Okay, let's talk about the tools you'll need to complete your cable management. Very first and most important thing is zip ties. I got these for $1.20 at Walmart. They come in all different shapes and sizes. You can actually get a pack of like small, medium, and large ones as well, because you might want different sizes to be able to tie your cables down. Obviously your 24-pin power cable is a lot thicker than the rest of these smaller cables. That'll make a difference when you're trying to use a small zip tie to hold down a bigger cable like that. Secondly, you'll need your wire cutters. These are just diagonal cutters that I actually got from a hardware store. I would like to get a smaller set, like a micro cutter. They have them on Amazon for, I think it's like $7 or something. They actually work really well in this aspect, and you just need them for cutting your cable ties. And then finally, you need a screwdriver to put your graphics card in or whatever other components. I've already pre-assembled most of the components in here. So if you're getting value out of this video, don't forget to hit the subscribe button down below and turn on your notifications so you'll know when I post the next one. Okay, let's get this process started. I've already connected all of my cables ahead of time to my power supply I'm going to need. Like I said before, some power supplies do not have removable cables and some do. I have already separated the cables into sections as well. You can see here I have the smallest cables such as front I/O like power button, power light, reset, HD audio, and then the USB 3.0 connector coming down to the left with Velcro ties. I've also secured my Corsair lighting hub for my fans RGB to the case. Along the top, I have the split fan connectors and SATA power connector for the AIO liquid cooler, which is positioned at the front of the case. I have the RGB connector running along the top too for the rear fan. Coming down the right side of the case is the EPS power USB connector for the AIO and some extra cabling for the rear PWM fan connector, since I routed it back into the pass-through to plug into fan header 1, which is on the center of the motherboard. They are very tricky to get to, but I managed to run it beside the heatsink. Just a little tip, try curling your zip ties to route them through tight angles, just to help guide them around the sharp bend. Don't tighten the zip ties all the way at first until you're done with that section in case you need to move them around. It makes it easier to slide them up and down along the cables. Always cut off excess zip ties after tightening. This keeps it clean and lets you tuck away the pigtail to prevent scratching yourself. Now you can see I'm moving on to the bottom of the case as I work in sections. This is where I need to plug in my USB for my AIO, the HD audio, and my front panel I/O. It's much easier to hold the I/O together in a little bundle to plug them in. I have luck holding the two hard drive light and power lights together, and then holding the power button and the reset button together separately. Next thing I plugged in is the RGB headers to the hub. Like I keep saying, make sure to group similar cables together and zip tie that, keeping them loose to move as needed. You can always cut off zip ties that are not needed. I may waste a few, but it makes for a much cleaner look. Next is the top, plugging in SATA power for the AIO and the fan headers. Now I know this is it for the top, so I'm tightening the zip ties down right away because the cables are right where I want them to be. Now we'll feed our SATA cables through the pass-throughs and plug them into the motherboard. Then plugging the SATA power into both hard drives in the cage and tucking excess under the drives or to the side of the cage. USB 3.0 front connectors are the biggest pain in the butt because they are so thick that they do not have any give when it comes to positioning. There are actually quite a few motherboards out there now that only have a front panel USB 3.0 Gen 1 connector on the bottom of them. This makes routing especially difficult when you have no pass-throughs on the bottom or one that is right up against the board. My motherboard happens to have two plugs on it, one on the side and one at the bottom. I like to save the 24-pin power and the graphics card power cables to last. They are usually the largest cables, and the graphics card is the most frequent thing that I'll be removing, so it makes it much easier when swapping them or upgrading. After installing the GPU, I pass the cables for power through the same pass-throughs I used for SATA, and sometimes it's the same as the USB 3.0 connector. This allows me to bring the connectors along the side of the GPU to hide them and create as clean of a look as possible, even though I'm not using custom cables. One benefit of modular cables is if you forget to route something, you can unplug the connector from the power supply itself, as I've done here, so that you can fix the routing without unplugging the graphics card again. Well, there you have it. Hopefully I gave you some new tips when building your first computer on cable management, or if you're a veteran builder and you've been doing this for a little while, maybe I gave you some tricks that you didn't know about. This process has been a complete mess trying to use my Desk Mini for editing and absolutely everything I want to do. So I'm glad to have this thing back together. I'm really happy with how it sounds, how it looks, everything. And I even did a better job cable managing now than I did in the past. So it's a win-win for me, really. Let me know down in the comments if there's any specifics that you really enjoyed, little things that you didn't know before. I really like reading those types of things. Time to put this thing to work and get this video edited. I'll see you next time.